If you don't have faith, you have to hear Jonathan Martin. If your faith has been blindsided this year, 2020, you have to hear Jonathan Martin. And if you have strong faith, the same holds true. Hello again, everybody. Welcome to another edition of My Faith with Homer and Pip. My name is Tommy Pippins. More important, Steve the Homer True. He had the vision for this podcast on that end, and it doesn't happen without our producer, Brett Young. Without further ado, Jonathan Martin. So, Homer, take it away.
This one is very easy, and that is anything is possible after you hear Jonathan's story. It doesn't matter how bad it is. As long as you have one breath, you can recover, because I know from hearing his story, and now the rest of the world needs to hear it. Am I accurate, Jonathan?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All to the glory of God. You know, yeah, just his ability to take the things that others would cast away, others would deem unworthy of energy and time and love. The Lord Jesus, he says, not that one. And that's what he did with me.
Let's go to the beginning. I don't know if I should say the worst, but stories get better based on how bad it was. It was so bad, not as bad as it was for Jonathan. Take us back to the bad.
So, okay. I grew up as a young boy. I grew up in foster care. Was taken away from my mother around age 5. She passed away while I was in foster care. And I would pray to God every night. My mother gave me as a child an understanding of Jesus. And, you know, I would pray, God, that tomorrow my mom would come and get me, and that this nightmare that I was living in would be over. And it was every night I prayed. And when I got the news coming home from school that my mother had passed away, I felt that no one was ever coming to get me. And how can there be a God if he truly loves children and loves us all? Why would I be in this situation? And this foster home that I was in was very abusive, to say the least. All kinds of physical abuse, mental abuse. Me and my brother were both placed in this foster home. And so at that time as a child, I really started to not believe that there was a God, and that we were just here, and this world was violent, and this world was full of pain and heartache. I ended up leaving the foster home when I was about 11, 12, moved in with my sister, my biological sister. She had been through the foster care system also, had a few children. One of her children's fathers was a gang member who was released from prison for shooting at the police. And this became my father figure. And so with that mentality that there was no God, that this world was full of pain and torment and heartache, I embraced the gang lifestyle, the things that he was teaching me, which were very violent, very drug dealing. I was about 13 years old when we had our first conversation about murder, that it was okay to murder. And so this was the type of situation I was brought up in and raised in. The gang lifestyle. I started selling drugs at 14. I had my first gun at 15, became a felon at 15. Shootings and robberies was an everyday part of life for me at such a young age, when other kids are focusing on basketball and football and school and what they wanted to be. My life became the gang, and whether that was to die in prison or die in the streets, I was fully and solely committed to that lifestyle. I mean, to be totally honest, throughout that time, the Lord had revealed himself to me in ways where, you know, I think every person, whether they're a believer or not, has an experience where they say that some type of divine intervention had to have happened, or someone was watching over me. We often heard, somebody's watching out for me. but it was the Lord Jesus that was watching out for me, spared me through. There was a murder attempt on my life at 16 years old. It was 28 shots. These two gentlemen had tried to murder me, and I was running down an alley, and I literally, Steve, I felt 5 or 6 bullets hit me in the back, blew me clean off my feet. I was 16 years old, and I laid there in the alley in a puddle with my face in a puddle, and I thought to myself, the thought came was, wow, this is how I die. 16 years old. And it was kind of, looking back at that mind frame that I was in, it was kind of comical to me that, dang, I didn't even really get started, and my life is ending this way. But the thought also came, as long as I'm in my body, as long as my soul hasn't left, then I'm going to fight. So I got up and started to run, and the guys continued to chase me down, and they were shooting and shooting and shooting. And here's how the Lord had his hand upon me was, after 28 rounds that these gentlemen had fired, I had bullet holes through my clothing, but not in my body. Those 5 or 6 times that I got hit in the back and literally blown off my feet, I did not have one bullet hole in my body, but I had the bullet holes to show that bullets had hit me, and it was just unexplainable. So at that very moment, I knew God was real. I couldn't deny that he wasn't real. But now I had to deal with the idea that the enemy kept putting in my head, was that I was beyond his redemption. I was beyond his forgiveness. And in that mentality, I continued to spiral down this path of darkness in the streets and with drugs and drug use. There's many times that the Lord stepped in and he said, not this one. You're not this one. Not today, Satan. Not this one. You're not going to take this one today. And the Lord continued to just bring me along this course. And it was a long time coming before I finally surrendered to him. And it was after time that he spared me. There was another miraculous moment where I was in jail. I was 19 years old. And I had this overwhelming, soul-crushing darkness upon me. Every waking moment, I just could not stop thinking that as soon as I was released from jail, I was going to die. And I could be talking to you about, something like we could be talking about the Packers. And for that moment, that darkness would be gone. But as soon as I stopped talking, there it was on my shoulders like an elephant. And it was so hard that it even became difficult to literally breathe, that this darkness was so consuming and overwhelming. And I opened up and I spoke to my cellmate at the time. We were good friends. And I said, hey, Justin, do you believe in God? And he said, yeah. And I explained to him what I was going through. And he said, why don't you talk to God about it? And I said, bro, because I know that I'm still living this lifestyle that I'm living, and I'm not going to ask God for forgiveness for things that I have done, knowing that I'm going to do those same things again. And he said, well, why don't you just try? And I said, all right, I'll try. This was my first time that I was actually going to hit my knees and cry out to the Lord. And so he said, I'll do it with you. And we both got on our knees in the cell. And I said, Lord, I don't know if you're real or if I deserve your love and forgiveness, but Lord, I need you right now. Lord, I need this weight to be gone. I need this darkness to be gone, Lord. I can't feel like this anymore. And I'm tearing up just remembering this moment, because my eyes were closed. And remember, this overwhelming darkness was all consuming my mind, my spirit, just all enveloping me. But when I said, Lord, please forgive me, and it was like the sun came into the room. It got so bright, and the tears just started flooding down my face. And it was like I took my first breath like a newborn baby. I breathed in so hard and so heavy, and the weight was lifted instantly. The darkness was pushed back by the light, and there was no denying that God was real and he was here for me. But it wasn't going to be that easy. It just wasn't. The enemy had his claws on me. He wanted my life. He wanted to destroy me. And I was so entrenched in this lifestyle of darkness that it was a battle. It was a real battle.
Can I interject one question?
Yes.
What was so great or so powerful about this lifestyle, the drugs? Is it the money? Is it because you had a part of you that was reasonably strong to stop and yet you couldn't. Explain how it is so great in some way that you couldn't stop yourself.
So the initial thing was the hopelessness of the life where, like how the saying says, the cards you're dealt. From the young age that all the tragedies of my life were transpiring, the things that were taking place in my life had built up a hopelessness inside of me. And with that type of stronghold in your life of hopelessness, you end up making decisions and putting yourself in situations that then becomes so hard to break away. And yes, it was the lure of those worldly things, the street fame, so to speak, the money, the camaraderie of the friends because of a lack of family, a lack of love. You know, and you receive that from those people that were in your life. And you then also have this mistaken identity of yourself, who you believe you are, because you don't have an idea of who you are and who you were created to truly be in the eyes of Jesus. So without having that understanding of who I truly am and who I was created to be, it was hard for me to say, who am I going to be? How do I walk away from all that I've ever known and leave behind everything that's ever mattered to me? So then, you know, I can't say that after all those years of doing those things that I didn't like them. I did, because I had walked in darkness for so long, you know.
And I have one other question, not to interrupt, but
No,
when they
fine.
do your movie, I always think, I want to know more about the guy who was in the prison with you, because it seems to me he's the story, not bigger than yours, but he's the he did everything. Like, what was a part of his life that got him to the point where I would say that he saved your life? Now, is that accurate? And am I correct in being amazed at him as much as you in your story?
You know what, Steve? This is how I can't even find a word to describe what I'm about to tell you. So my friend Justin, me and him both had release dates a week apart. And he was released the week before me. At the time that I prayed, I think I might have had like a month and a half to go before I got out. So he was roughly around the same time. Within 2 weeks of me getting released and him being released, he was murdered. He was murdered. He was murdered in the streets on the south side of Milwaukee. Very tragic story, because overall, yes, he was a gang member, but he was one of those guys that was just, you always looked at him and said, you know, you're better than this. You know, and that was coming from other gang members, other people that were walking in that life. And you just looked at Justin like, bro, this isn't for you. And yes, tragically, 2 weeks after I was released, he was murdered. I often thought, was that darkness that I felt, was that death on him? You know, I don't know. That was just something that I fought to try to understand for the longest. But I didn't realize then that as I know now, that it was on both of us. That the enemy he wanted that very fate for both of us. Not just him, not just me.
But are you certain that he's in heaven? It's tragic. And I'm thinking that you could maybe be the only person, if I'm right, who could smile a bit, given what occurred, when the majority of other people just know the story as you told it.
I believe that with with faith, all things are possible. When we submit ourselves to the Lord and we let him have dominion over us rather than the darkness that's out here in the world seeking to devour whomever it can. When we yield our lives to the Lord Jesus Christ, there's no doubt that he claims you and you are his, you know. So for him to tell me, why don't you pray? Why don't you? And I'll do it with you. You know, it. I always look back at that moment, like, and I thank him, and I'm thankful for that moment because it was one of the most powerful things that have happened in my life, where the Lord actually came in my room, answered my prayer, answered me calling out to him in a world full of billions of people. Little old me, the one who was in a prison cell for doing unrighteous things, evil things, wicked things, that the Lord loved me, like Romans 5, I believe it's Romans 5:8. Forgive me if I missed the scriptures, but where it says, "For while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us." You know, while we were enemies of His, that He died for us. And while with natural eyes, someone may have looked at me and said, "Man, dude, he's never going to be anything. He's not worth the energy or the effort." The Lord Jesus said, "Not my creation, not mine. That's mine." He came there. So if he did that for me, I'm sure he did the very same thing for Justin, because Justin was the one who was there with me and said, "I'll get on my knees with you," and told me to give it to God. So
I had one other question about your growing up, where I'm assuming your family life was horrible, and I'm being kind. How do you end up in a foster home? At what age? Was it 2 or 3 or 5? There's you left that part out.
Well,
I'm curious.
My mother, she had a very rough upbringing. I have 8 other aunts and uncles. My mother was the black sheep of the family. So when she had, I have 3 other brothers and sisters. And when she started having our children, she was kind of pushed to the side by my family. And she, to put it bluntly, just had a very poor choice in men. And so during a time where a boyfriend of hers was beating her up during the domestic violence situation, my brother had learned in the 1st grade about 911. And he called 911 because this man said, he told me and my brother that my mom was trying to hurt herself. And really, she was trying to defend herself from him. But the police came, they took us, they put us in foster care, and I was 5. And then in that situation, I can understand now, like how the enemy preys on your hopelessness, because when my mother lost her children, she really spiraled downward, where we never made it back home. We never got back to her. And in the end, she ended up losing her life in a domestic violence situation. She was beaten and had a cerebral aneurysm. And so, yeah, I actually stayed in and out of foster care, multiple foster homes. And then until I was about 11, 12. And then I moved in with my sister. It was still a ward of the state, but yeah, that was in one particular foster home. It was very, very abusive. So much to the point that when I ran away from that home and reported to the authorities, which we had been doing for so many years, of the abuse, my foster father actually committed suicide that day, because the truth was finally got to the police, like social services. It's the 80s. We're talking there was so much going on. The system was very broken at the time. So a lot of our complaints of abuse, they were initially checked and then dismissed, and it went on and on that way. But once the police were involved, my foster father committed suicide, and things got very bad for me. I ended up having to stay there in that same climate of violence, but now I was the true target of the violence because I ran away and I caused this. That was all helped to further my hopelessness and lack of, or that feeling of no love.
Tommy, you can take it from here because I know we're going to get to Marty, Marty, Marty.
Yeah, I do see a part two if Jonathan will grace us with that at some point, including God Touch Milwaukee and our friend, the aforementioned Marty Calderon. We were blessed to be introduced to him by our friend, our producer, Brent Young. But I want to focus for a moment, Jonathan, please, on the darkness and the hopelessness. And there's reference in the Bible, I believe, to those in darkness have seen a light. You have seen the light, and now you're the light of Jesus. You shine it every day. You're doing it here on My Faith with Homer and Pip. Would you speak to those who are in great darkness and just can't find any hope or see any chance of getting out to the other side?
Of course. So I was explaining to someone, I was doing a Bible study at God Touch Milwaukee, which in the next part we will discuss where I was able to be nurtured and grown to become the child of God that I am today. But that darkness, I explained to someone in a Bible study. I asked them, I said, what is darkness? And there was a lot of different explanations. And I said, well, the scientific definition of darkness is the absence of light. So the light has substance. The darkness is just the absence of it. The light, once it shines in the darkness has to recede. So that place of darkness is only temporary if we allow it to be. If we allow it to have hold in our lives, it will stay there. It's only once we embrace the light. And who is the light? The true light of the world is Jesus Christ, who is the life of all men. And once I embrace that light, the first time in my wicked mind, in that complete darkness, when I called out to the light came. And so anyone that is in a place of hopelessness and of despair, of feeling like there is no place else for them to go, or that life isn't worth it anymore, you have to call out to the light. And who is the light? Jesus. You have to call out to Jesus. And just as I was in that cell, locked away, he answered. He answered, and he came to me. And it was a battle, but it was that hope that I felt that he really loves me. He does care about me, no matter what I've done. And that no one is beyond redemption. No one is beyond his saving grace. His mercy and his love endures forever. And he's waiting. He's waiting for you to call him. He's waiting for you to open the door. He can only stand at the door. You have to reach out and turn the handle of your heart and allow him in. And once you do that, you're gonna see what happened to me can happen to you. It can happen to anyone who allows the Lord Jesus in. There's nothing that he can't restore, nothing that he can't clean up, nothing that he can't transform. I mean, our God is a mighty God, a powerful God. And he did that for me. He did that for me.
Homer, how about the joy and the light in the face and the heart and the soul of Jonathan Martin?
Yeah, as I said, it's anything is possible for anyone after you hear Jonathan and see that smile that he has right now as he's telling us that. Marty, part two, right? Marty, because that's the other thing. How do you take someone whose life is hopeless? It's the worst of the worst. We're at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, and this existed and occurred because of people that entered your life. And I want to know how that's done, because people need to hear that as well.
Yes,
God
they do.
worked to you through people, and it took those people too.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. That is one of the most powerful things, is that the Lord will use anyone and everyone who is willing and able to be used by him to do the most powerful things on this earth that we never thought we could do. And it was a man named Marty Calderon who came to that gang neighborhood infested with gang members and drug dealers and violence and death and darkness, and came speaking of the light. And
Stop.
then
Stop.
Yep.
Right.
Stop.
Jonathan, if you're willing to do part 2, we'll embrace
sir.
it and we'll embrace you. It is such a joy, and it really is humbling to listen to you. I know you've impacted many by being willing once again to share your faith story as you shine the light of Jesus and glorify him with every breath. So to you and your family, God's blessings during Advent and Christmas. And if we can get you back next week, Thursday at 11 o'clock for a recording, we'll do it in your busy schedule. If not, soon after. How's that?
Next week works for me. I'm eager and willing anytime to glorify the Lord. You say it, you name the place, I'm there.
Thank you so much. I don't know what else to say. You know, as Homer said, there comes a point where enough is enough, except great gratitude on our part. This has been My Faith with Homer and Pip. Steve, the Homer True, had the vision for this, and here we are sitting with Jonathan Martin today. Brent Young is our producer. He introduced us to Marty Calderon. I'm Tommy Pippins, and man alive, I'm ready to jump through the ceiling after listening to that powerful faith story. And there's more to come. We'll see you next time, everybody, and pray that you have been impacted in a positive way. God bless you.